Question 3. Circle the correct answer for each of the following questions. So these are multiple choice questions now, part A, part B and part C. So I have to circle one of these options and that will give me 1 mark. Sometimes these questions can be a little tricky, so if you are stuck, don't spend ages on them because this is only worth 1 mark, for example. Move on to the next question. Carry on throughout the paper. Don't forget to come back to it though and have another go. If you're still stuck, then make sure that you circle one answer for each of these. Don't ever leave anything blank because you've still got a 20% chance of getting it right, even if you've had a guess. Okay, so let's have a look at part A then. So the fraction 408 over 1224 is the same as what? One of these fractions must be exactly the same as this. So we're talking about equivalent fractions now, which means the same. So when we do that, we're saying that 408 over 1224. So we need to think, what have I got to times 408 by to get 1224? 408 times what gives me this? There must be a fraction in these options here that will be the same. So that top number must be times by this number here. So they are the same to give that bottom number. So I need to first figure out 408 times what is 1224. So I can see straight away that these numbers are all multiples of 4. So it means they're in the 4 times table. So if I cover up this here, I can see that 8 times 3 would be 24. And if I cover up these here, I can see that 4 times 3 is 12, or 400 times 3 is 1200. So I think this could be 3, our missing number here. So I can double check that by using the grid method. So I'm going to split my number up into hundreds, tens and units. So I've got 400, I haven't got any tens, and I've got 8 units. So 408. I'm going to put this in the grid method, times by 3. I think that could be my missing number. So 3 times 4 is 12. Don't forget the 2 zeros. 3 times 8 is 24. Now I have to add up all the numbers in my grid. 1200 add 24 is 1224. So that was correct there. 3 times 408 gives me 1224. What you might see straight away is that if I times this 408 by 3 to give me this, then 408 must be 1/3 of 1224. And that's one of my options here. If you didn't see that straight away, then you can work out each fraction at a time. So as we said, one of our options, our answer, has to be equivalent or exactly the same as this fraction, which means the top number has to be times by 3 to give us the bottom number. So I'm going to try and do that with each fraction. So 500 times 3, 500, 1000, 1500. That says 1200. So that is not an equivalent fraction because I cannot times the top number by 3 to give me the bottom number. Let's try this one. 1 times 3 is 3. That is correct. So that top number can be times by 3 to give me the bottom number. So that fraction is equivalent to this fraction here. So that would give me 1 mark. I'm going to try and do the same with the other fractions just as a bit of practice. So 1 times 3 is not 3 at the bottom, so that is not equivalent. I cannot times the top number by 3 to give me the bottom number, so it is not the same as that fraction. 40 times 3, 40, 80, 120. Well, that says 122, so that is not correct. That is not equivalent to this fraction. 48 times 3, well, this number is smaller, so I can't times 48 by 3 to get this number, so that is not the same as this fraction here. Okay, part B. When a equals 3 and b equals 5, then 2a plus b is equal to what? Must be one of these numbers here. This is substitution now. They've given us an expression, 2a plus b, and they've told us what a and b is. So now I can substitute these numbers for these letters here. So this says 2a. So when there's a number right next to the letter, when they're touching, it means that they're multiplying. So this actually says 2 times a. Well, we know that a now means 3. So I'm going to substitute that a for a 3. 2 times 3. Then I have plus b. Well, I now know that b is 5. So I'm going to substitute that 5, that letter, so I have plus 5. I can now work this out. So I've got 2 times 3 is 6, add on 5, equals 11. And that's one of my options here. So that will give me 1 mark. Part C. Half of 7.5 is what? And I have 5 options here. So I'm going to break this up now. I've got 7.5. Okay, so first of all I'm going to half the 7, and then I'm going to half the half to make it easier. So half of 7, well, 7 is an odd number, so I'm going to expect to see 0.5 or a half here. So if I draw this out, so we've got half of 6 would be 3, but we have 7. So I need to take half of this one here. So half of 7 is 3 and a half. Then I'm going to half this half. Well, some of you may know that when you half a half, that gives you a quarter. Okay, you can see this. If I draw a circle, okay, here would be a half of that circle. But I have to half that again. So if I half this half, it gives me this. And that there is 1/4 of this circle. 1 shaded out of 4 in total. So the question was asking me to half 7.5. So I've halved the 7 and I've halved the half, and now I have to add these two together. So 3.5 add a quarter gives me 3 3/4. Whoops. Okay, you can see that if I have the half here, shade that in. So I've got 3 holes, and then I've got the half, add on a quarter. So if I shade in another quarter, that gives me 3/4. 3 shaded out of the 4 in total. So I've got 3 holes and 3/4, and that is one of my options. You could also say that was 3.75. that wasn't one of my options, but if it was there as a decimal, that's what it would be. So that would then give me 1 mark.